Is your practice tired of wrestling with insurance denials, deciphering EOBs, and watching your revenue slip through the cracks? You are not alone. Welcome to The Claim Game, the podcast designed to cut through the confusion and provide you with the best practices for revenue cycle management success. We are Jeremy and Kathryn Zug, and we've been with people just like you in the trenches. Each week, we'll break down complex billing processes, share real-world solutions from practices like yours, and ask questions of the game makers and changers of healthcare so you can take control of your revenue. Let's turn those claim denials into deposits and help you return to focusing on patient care. It's time to win the claim game.
Welcome back to the Claim Game. As a reminder, we're going through revenue cycle management best practices. In the last round, or the last time around the table, we discussed different considerations for picking your game partners. Payer selection is a really important step for helping you be successful as you begin to make it around the game board, right? And as a quick reminder, if you missed the initial board setup, we want you to understand the full scope of the board of healthcare, right? How this thing works and how the 6 domains of billing all work together to create the healthcare landscape. So be sure to check out episode 1 for the complete overview of the key territories. Now, today, we're going to focus our attention on our current territory, credentialing. And today, we're going to zoom in on the credentialing process. And this is a real page turner, so you can work toward initiating the game. We're going to start with an overview of the whole process, and then in future rounds, we will zoom in on different elements of the process. So get ready to analyze its unique challenges and discover the optimal moves to conquer the credentialing process. Before we jump into the nitty-gritty, it's worth considering who will handle your practice's credentialing. You essentially have 2 paths: DIY, which stands for do it yourself, in case you did not know, or you can outsource to a specialized service. This choice completely depends on your resources, expertise, your capacity for stress, and the complexity of your needs.
Yeah, and when we say DIY, this does not mean that you, as the practice owner, need to be the one doing the keystrokes every time you add an insurance company or a provider to your practice. Rather, this could just mean that you have someone directly on your staff that handles this with an internal, repeatable process.
Right. So you might be asking yourself at this point, what are the pros and cons of these options? It's a very good question, listeners, to be asking yourself. So some pros and cons of outsourcing credentialing. Now, keep in mind, we used to do credentialing, we don't anymore. And so we have a very good view of what this process entails. So one pro, the learning curve can feel steep, and you'll have someone who can hold your hand along the way with more experience, right? So that's if you outsource credentialing, you have a professional. Kathryn, what's a con of the outsourcing credentialing?
Yeah, there are a few cons. I would say you have less control over the process as a whole. And sometimes being more aware of the credentialing process can help with your overall billing and revenue cycle management processes as you move forward. They can function smoother if you have a better grasp on what has happened. And then it can be really expensive. Paying per provider or per insurance panel can be pricey, and having someone do it internally as part of the normal processes can prove to be more cost effective. I mean, obviously you still have to pay that person, but if they're following a repeatable process and you are working with the same payers over and over again, ideally it would become more efficient. And so if they're more familiar with your practice setup, it might actually be more efficient in the long run to have someone doing it in-house.
Yeah, and I think we need to offer one more con. And this is a function of really the industry, right? And our experience working with credentialers in this business. We've been at this for more than a decade. So we've seen a lot of credentialers come and go. We've worked with a lot of them. There are a few very high quality ones, but credentialers tend to get full quickly because there are a lot of healthcare clinicians looking to start a practice or go out on their own or build their practice and hire more and more clinicians, which is great. But credentialers get full and then they seem to fall apart. And so if you're going to outsource, we recommend going with somebody who's experienced, who has volume
Capacity.
capacity, who has bandwidth, who has depth, and who knows your area of healthcare. So those are just some things to know so that you don't fall off the tracks. But if you can account or assume those things in the person you hire, you'll be off to the races.
Yeah, and I mean, there are cons to doing it yourself as well. I'm going to start by talking about some of the pros. I think some of the primary pros of DIY would be control. You have control over the process and customization. The other thing that makes outsourcing difficult is if you aren't intimately aware of the process, you're going to be really frustrated with the lack of what feels like the lack of progress. So when we've worked with credentialers and we've done credentialing and we have bought a credentialing company and we've done a lot of things in the credentialing realm. And one of the things that was really difficult, and one of the reasons that we even had this credentialing company available, is because they could not handle the volume of questions about progress on applications. And now AI has brought us a long way in getting updates more regularly through portals. But when we owned this company, I would say it was on the front end of that kind of progress.
Or back end, however you want to think about it.
Yeah. So progress looked like calling and getting updates, which you still have to do a lot of. But sometimes the answer is that there's no update.
Yeah, that's right.
And customers don't like that very much.
No.
But there's also not much you can do about it. And so one of the pros of DIY is that you get used to that and you start to learn when no progress is abnormal.
Yeah, that's right. You can what Kathryn is getting at is that you can manage your expectations a lot better if you're doing this yourself or you have an internal person. Can I do the cons? I'd love to do the cons.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do we have another pro?
Well, I was just going to say, and I already mentioned this above, but if your person that you have in-house is doing it over and over and over again, they're just going to know the application. They're going to know what needs to go where. They can just keep better track of everything.
Oh, 100%.
An external credentialer is not necessarily going to be as familiar with the payer as you are because they have to do applications across all kinds of states and provider specialties and
have their own lives, right? So let's do cons, right? So experience, right? If you are credentialing with a brand new insurance company to you in your practice, the credentialing company that you outsource to likely has an advantage over you just by having more experience, right? If somebody has credentialed clinicians for 10 years with the same payer over and over, let's say hundreds of providers, right? They know the process. They know the phone numbers to call. They know the portals. They know where I hesitate to use this analogy, but they know where the bodies are buried, right? And so you don't want to fall into some of those graves that somebody has already fallen into a bunch of times. So
they might know all the reps too.
Yeah, they might even know all the reps. And so, you sort of enter through the back door.
Don't tell them there's a back door.
Not a back door.
There's no back door.
There's a slick path with experience, right?
That's true.
All right, there's no back door. But there is a expedient, efficient way to do that.
Yeah.
So the conversation is really pitting control and customization against experience and cost, right?
Yeah, essentially.
So let's say I am a clinician and I decide to outsource. It's good to understand the process, right?
Yes.
Okay.
I would say this is kind of how I feel about everything in business ownership, but you really should understand the process even if you're not going to do it yourself.
Yeah. So Kathryn, let's say you're talking to me, the clinician that doesn't know much. Can you walk me through the process a bit?
Yeah. Let's look at the typical journey. The credentialing process can really be broken down into 6 core stages. We're going to walk through each one, keeping in mind that this is the credentialing process from the perspective of the provider or the practice owner. The payer, the payer has completely different categories for this, which we're going to review more in round 8 with Kathy Gilbert. She's going to talk about credentialing from the perspective of the payer. So I have an image here that should be on the screen. And you can access this in the show notes. But these are the 6 stages of credentialing. The first is information gathering, which is quite robust. The second is application completion and really submission. The third is application follow-up. The fourth is contract finalization. The fifth is start date establishment. And then finally, stage 6 is manage and review. So let's take a deeper dive, and yet not a deep dive, because we will do a deeper dive later. Let's talk about stage 1, information gathering. This is arguably the most intensive phase, but getting it right sets you up for success. So it involves collecting comprehensive details about both your practice and then any individual providers that are going to be added to your practice contracts. So first, let's talk about practice information. You'll need a lot of different information to establish your practice.
A lot.
Yeah, it is really typical to use platforms like CAQH to gather this information because it is accessed by many insurance companies to view all of your necessary practice information. We're going to go through the specifics of what information is needed when we do that, a deeper dive actually in episode 5, round 5. So whether you outsource your credentialing or you do it in-house, you still have to get your information into CAQ, which needs to be up to date at all times. And this part is typically done by you.
Yeah, you're going to get a notification probably quarterly about this, and you need to do it. It's called attestation. Complicated word for, is your information the same as it was last time? And it's very important to do. Payers very much care about that.
Yes, and we will talk more about that later.
Yep.
There are ways to set up your CAQH, if you didn't know, so that a single person in your practice can manage the practice information, which is then linked to multiple providers. So this is where I would recommend having an in-house admin or something like that is going to be keeping the practice information up to date and then linking providers as they get added, so that practice information is associated with the individual providers. This in CAQH language is called a practice manager. This practice manager can control the practice information and the affiliated providers. They cannot do all of the work to get the individual provider set up. There are definite limitations to what the practice manager role can do, but the link to the practice can speed the process along. So here is a short general list of the practice information you may need to get started. This is very condensed. We will go over much more detail in round 5, but I want to just give you a brief overview here.
Can I jump in really quick?
Yes.
A more complete list, a comprehensive list, is found in this book right back here, Insurance Billing Basics, which you can find on our website. But that has an actual complete list of things that you're going to need to gather.
And yet I'm still going to say there could be more.
Yes, that's right.
So identifying information, which means you need the name of your practice, the name of your owners, address, phone number, etc. Bank information, which I'm not going to go into details on what that is until round 5. You need bank information, contact information for a point of contact within the practice, a list of your services, and then you will need something to demonstrate if you have any kind of disability accessibility information in your office. And you may not, and that's fine, but they're going to ask you questions about that. So like I said, we'll be more comprehensive in round 5. Next, within information gathering, and that will be the same for every payer. So you want to have that available at all times. Your practice information, for the most part, doesn't change unless you move locations or move banks or etc. So then we have provider information, and this is specific to each individual practitioner. This is where a practice manager role in CAQH can get that information started, but really can't get them across the finish line. So this is our recommendation. Have some sort of intake interview with your new providers when you're onboarding them so that you can gather this information in one place and walk them through their CAQH account live. You are not supposed to have access to someone else's CAQH account. However, you can sit with them physically and walk through it with them. This, in my mind, would be the job requirement for your in-house admin if you have one. Here is the general summary list of the provider information that you'll need. First and foremost, the credentialing status. Has the provider already created a CAQH account previously? Have they been credentialed with the insurance companies that you will be credentialing them with? It's important to know that. And how they were credentialed previously or currently, because that determines how you need to be credentialed now. Again, we're not going to go into this in great detail until episode 5, but tune in for that. It is very, very, very important for you to know how someone is credentialed before you credential them again. So then you will need Again, identifying information. So what is their name, legal name, NPI, things like that. Education, including certifications, professional references, services that provider is going to render, coverage in case of absence, criminal and civil history, patient limitations, which means patients that you don't feel comfortable seeing, or some of the descriptions or exclusions that you'd like to include. Exclusions to include. Yeah, there you go. And then treatment modalities.
Yeah, that's a lot of information, right? And so if you're listening to Kathryn and you need to get up and go get a cup of coffee, definitely go do that. I know that it's a lot. And again, this is not a page turner, but this is information that you really need. And it's the bedrock of your application. So be as detailed as you can.
Mm-hmm.
So, Kathryn, that's stage one. Now you've done stage one and sub stages. Does this bring us to stage two, or do we still have more to go over in stage one?
That's it. Just provider information.
Oh, great.
And practice
Yeah,
information.
wonderful.
So stage 2 now is application completion and submission. So once you've gathered all the necessary documents and information, This episode was brought to you by the Hourglass Learning Hub. We know that managing your practice's revenue cycle can feel complex. That's why Practice Solutions has built the Hourglass Learning Hub, a comprehensive platform designed to simplify every aspect of your billing machine. We've organized foundational knowledge across 6 critical domains: credentialing, patient registration, eligibility and benefits, payment posting, aging follow-up, and claim submission. Each piece is vital, and we've compiled revenue cycle management educational articles for a clear understanding of how they all interconnect, giving you those aha moments you've been waiting for. For practical application, dive into our DIY billing resources, the very tools and templates our own team uses to help you proactively manage claims and optimize cash flow. And when you hit a roadblock, our Ask the Biller feature provides a direct channel to our seasoned experts for personalized video responses to your gnarly billing questions. If you're ready to take decisive control of your practice's financial health, explore the Hourglass Learning Hub today. Become a member of the Hourglass Learning Hub to access these awesome resources. For the Claim Game listeners only, we are offering 15% off the annual membership, which means you can have access to all these resources today for only $425 for the year. Click the link in the show notes to get started today. Time to actually complete and submit the applications to the payers. At this point, you need to do a little bit of research for your payer list. Spend some time collecting a list that includes the following for each of the payers you need to for onboarding providers: payer name, get the online portal link, any specific credentialing links or directories. I recommend storing blank applications or the link to the application.
Oh, 100%.
And then there's a difference between a full application and a change form. So get both. And then notes. You will have so many notes the more you do this. As you learn, you need a place to put feedback. So I recommend keeping a small chart of information that you refer to often. And I'm going to have another image. This should look something like this chart that is now on the screen. Once you have that chart completed, you can now begin to fill out the applications that you have linked within your chart. Like if I have 5 payers, I should have a full list of 5 applications on my chart ready to go. That will make your life so much easier. The application itself may be a PDF application. They were a lot when I was doing credentialing.
Yeah.
But I know a lot of payers have updated it to some kind of online form or within the portal form. So you just need to establish your practice first, if you have not already done that, so that you will start by credentialing your practice and yourself as a practice owner if you are associated with your Type 2 MPI. We recommend doing this with a Type 2 practice NPI and an organization tax ID. That's how you establish your practice. And then you will be established as the first provider within the practice using your Type 1 NPI. The practice and the first provider are established at the same time. The application completion process involves filling out online forms or paper applications meticulously. You have got to spend so much time paying attention to detail, making sure that everything matches your supporting documentation, which should mean, if you have a middle initial in your driver's license, you have a middle initial on the application. You don't want anything to hang you up, so make sure everything matches. you'll be using all the information that was collected in stage 1, which is why Jeremy said, don't cut corners.
Oh,
Don't cut corners.
This is where you're going to get tempted to outsource. Kathryn said the magic word meticulous, and a lot of you have already said, where do I look for another credential or a credentialing company, right?
Yeah.
But keep in mind, there's a difference between control and cost, right? So keep that in mind.
Yeah, and you'll learn what is important to the insurance companies as you go. So once you've established a group practice contract with the insurance company, you really only will be adding individual providers to an established contract using their type 1 NPI. So you will not need to establish your practice again. You just need to add providers. So again, that might be a different form.
That's right.
It might be an abbreviated form. Oh.
Yeah, and there's a small clarification here. Some insurance companies require 2 or more clinicians within a practice to establish a group. So if that's the case, hire, right? Get 2 or 3 clinicians in your group and then establish your type 2.
Or you just have to start by credentialing as an individual, and then you can change as you add more providers. And I don't think that the process switching from individual to group is as long.
Typically
because you're already established. They don't have to do all the background checking and things
that
they would have.
So Kathryn, is there a different or an abbreviated route within the application to add a provider to a pre-existing contract instead of establishing an entirely new contract?
Yes, I think you typically will have at least a slightly abbreviated application. I don't know that you'll be using it, again, a different form altogether. But if you don't know what the difference is, call your provider rep to get that information before filling out the entire application, because it might actually slow down the process if you fill out the wrong form.
Right. So that makes a lot of sense. And you just submit from there and wait?
Yes. This next up is crucial, an often ongoing step. Stage 3, application follow-up. If you are able to obtain information from your provider rep regarding a typical timeline for credentialing, that would be an excellent thing to note in your payer list chart under the notes as a guiding principle. Because like I said, I think the most frustrating part about credentialing is waiting.
Yeah, and waiting is not passive in this case. It's a very active process.
Well, it can be. And I think if you have the guiding principle where they tell you, this phase typically takes 2 weeks, this phase typically takes 6 weeks, if you have that to go off of, then that will kind of guide your follow-up. So our general recommendation is don't just submit and forget. Use a credentialing application follow-up log of some kind to track your follow-up activity. For each application, record the insurance company, the provider name, the status, the initial submission date, and put a follow-up date on that chart so that you have some guiding principle of when to next look, and then keep notes. This log will help you track progress, note when an application is approved and the finalized date, or if it's denied. So consistent follow-up is key to identifying and resolving any issues promptly.
What do we recommend for a follow-up cadence?
It's really a good question, and I get asked this a lot. And there's some slight nuance to my answer based on my previous experience. But first and foremost, you always want to confirm that the application has been received and is processing. I would do this 3 to 5 business days after the submission. If you are submitting an online application and the application window gives you a record of submission or like a confirmation or a confirmation number, take a screenshot of that, save the confirmation number on your log, and still call within 3 to 5 business days to confirm with a human that they see it on file. While you are on the phone confirming, ask them a couple of additional questions. Here's what I would ask. 1, how long do we think we will need to wait for processing to be completed? Which I know I mentioned above, but do it again. And 2, how will we be notified if there is an issue or a denial of the application, and how soon? So what I mean by how soon is how quickly will the notification be sent out after the issue or denial happens. That information will give you a lot of guidance on the cadence of follow-up. So put that information in the notes of your payer list chart or in the log that I mentioned so that you can keep that and reference it often. If you don't like the answer to the second question, and you probably won't, I would recommend doing follow-up on your application via phone or a responsive email every 2 weeks to make sure you aren't missing critical updates that can be sped along with proactive interaction.
Yeah, that's right. And keep in mind, again, you're going to put on your detail-oriented type A hat during this process, or you're going to assign the type
Someone
A
who
hat.
is.
That's right.
Yes.
You didn't go to grad school and do all of what you needed to do to wade through a concrete mess of paperwork. But again, like Kathryn said, it's very important that you understand how this works. So what type of information should we expect when we follow up?
You will likely get very little information when you follow up. It is most probable that you will hear the same answer of, it's still processing when you call, which is not bad news.
No.
But you call anyway because you want to ensure that you don't miss a more substantial update when it actually comes. And that's why I think the answer to that second question above is so important, because if they're telling you, it's going to come in the mail, which it might, then that's probably not going to be satisfactory to you, because that could delay your process even more. So here are some of the updates that could come when there actually is an update. 1, we need more information. Okay, you're missing a supporting document. You need to clarify something. 2, your application was denied. Oops. 3, your application is in final review. Or 4, your application has been approved. You will want to know if any of those things have happened.
And we have to call to get this information? Like we have to speak to an actual human being?
Not necessarily. There may be an online portal that has a progress bar that is maintained with an up-to-date status.
Like a pizza delivery bar.
Yeah, like Domino's. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that.
Shout out to Domino's.
As AI comes into play, we have seen a lot more sophistication in the status updates online, which is good as a level 1 of updates. But if you see the same update over the course of a month and you're not seeing any change, I would still call.
Yep.
Or email. Like I said, if you have a responsive representative that can just do a quick peek, great. That's even better. You don't have to wait on hold and...
Yeah, it is even better. And that would indicate, too, that you've picked a very good insurance partner to play this game with if they're that responsive. So what happens if the application is flagged for more information, or just if the worst happens and you're just flat out denied? What happens then?
I mean, if it's flagged for more information, you want to make sure you speak to a person who can tell you exactly what you need to fix or provide to them. Get as much detail as possible regarding what was flagged so that you can provide the information one time and not get flagged again.
No kidding.
I would also write down what you learn in your chart for future reference, because if you made this mistake this time, you'll probably make it again if you don't keep a note. If the application is denied, there's not much you can do. You have to start over at square one and resubmit a full application. Hopefully, your information is still saved, so you don't have to do the keystrokes again, but you will have to submit it from square one again. If this happens to you, again, speak to the person who can tell you every detail about what was submitted incorrectly, because you need to document this with great detail to learn and avoid this in the future. And when we speak with Kathy Gilbert in episode 8, you will learn that there are, in fact, people on the insurance side who will sit with you and walk you through the application step by step. If your rep isn't doing that, request somebody else.
That's right. I mean, keep in mind, the mandate of an insurance company is twofold. One is to provide healthcare, access to care, access to quality care for the membership that they serve. And 2, it's to make money, right? That first priority is the one that they're trying to satisfy through your participation in their network. So that is a priority. Make sure you get somebody on the phone that can do that. So what if my contract is approved or in final review? I can see clients, right? And submit claims and get paid?
Nope.
What?
No. Once your application is making its way through, you will eventually reach stage 4, contract finalization.
Woohoo!
When a payer approves your application, they will typically issue you a contract. You might receive a welcome letter, but you have to have a contract at some point. And it is vital to review this document carefully.
Yeah, as in get an attorney, perhaps, to review it. So what should we be reviewing? What are some of the clauses that we should? We're not attorneys, right? We can't provide legal advice, but what are some of the terms you would be reviewing?
Yeah, we're going to go over this in greater detail in round 7. So I'm just going to give you the categories of things that we recommend reviewing. Here are the key areas to scrutinize. 1, your responsibilities. Make sure you know what you're saying you will do. 2, the insurance company's responsibilities. 3, the term and termination clauses. 4, compensation details. Do not sign something if you've not seen a fee schedule. You can request one if it was not included with the contract.
Yeah.
5, timely filing requirements. How quickly do you need to submit claims? 6, what is the procedure for submitting claims? And 7, any specific credentialing identifiers. So you just need to verify your own information. Is your NPI, tax ID address, taxonomy code all accurate? Because if you sign it and then you submit claims differently than what's on the contract, they won't process properly.
Don't pass go. Don't collect $200 or more.
Yeah. So this is the time to negotiate. So ask questions and make requests. Once you're satisfied and any negotiations are complete, the contract can be finalized by providing a signature, which leads directly to stage 5.
Yay!
Establish start date. It's really important that I mention that if you don't have signing your contract does not mean that you're in network right away. So the contract will specify an effective date, or you'll work with the payer to establish one. This is the date from which you are officially in network and can begin seeing patients. The contract is not your proof of in-network status. Your start date is.
Amazing. So we're done at this point. Yes, we're done at this point. No, what is the 6th stage?
The process doesn't really end. So it's kind of a unfair thing that it's in a timeline when it really is a circle. It slows down and you can take a step back from such close micromanagement. But stage 6 is manage and review. Credentialing is not a one-time event. You'll need to manage your credentialing status on an ongoing basis. This includes re-credentialing or reattestation, which we've mentioned at the beginning, which payers require periodically, often every 2 to 3 years, sometimes annually. It also means keeping all of your information updated with them, such as changes in address, changes in services, provider license changes. And you do this by keeping your
QH up to date.
Yes. You should schedule time to review your CAQH information every 6 to 12 months. And Jeremy mentioned earlier that these things are sent out to you. There's some automated emails that come to you. Even if you're getting those, I might put those in a junk email folder or something. Like I'll get to that later. If you do that, that's fine. Just make sure you have a regular cadence to review and update that information, even if nothing has changed.
Yep, that's right. So that's all then.
Yes, as long as you read the contract and flag the review date so you can make sure that your contract is maintained, because they will probably include their network status review date in their contract terms. It is also a good time to review the terms and make sure that they're still favorable to you.
That's right. So there you have it. A comprehensive overview of the credentialing process from initial information gathering to ongoing management. This is a really detailed and lengthy process. But by understanding each stage and staying as organized as you can humanly manage, you can navigate it successfully. Because we're doing an overview of the process this episode, we do not have a case study card for this round, but be sure to listen to the next round where we review a case study card that shows how poorly application submission can go without a plan. The process doesn't really end, it slows down, and you can take a step back and that's right. So at this point, we really, really thank you for bearing with us through this episode.
I don't know where we are.
Thanks for tuning into the Claim Game. Join us next time as we do a deeper dive into credentialing application completion in much greater detail. If you have any questions or want help with any resources that we have recommended in today's episode, consider looking at our Learning Hub that has credentialing resources already made for you to use. There's a link to the Learning Hub in the show notes. If you enjoyed today's episode of the Claim Game, please take a moment to leave us a rating and review wherever you listen to your podcasts. It really helps new listeners to find us. Make sure you never miss an episode by subscribing to the Claim Game on your favorite podcast app. Your feedback means so much to us. We want to provide valuable education about revenue cycle management. So if there's something we didn't cover in our topic that was a burning question for you, please let us know so we can try to get you the information you desire. You can find the links to all resources we mentioned in this episode in the show notes. And if you want to dive deeper into our resources, we have 2 places you can do that. First, you can go to our blog at practicesol.com/blog, where we have 8 years of educational blogs. If you want to learn more about what Practice Solutions does, reach out. We'd love to hear from you. Just go to practicesol.com to learn more and to connect with one of our awesome people on our team. Thanks for listening. We are Jeremy and Kathryn Zug, and this is The Claim Game. See you at the game table next time.